The Pokemon trading card game for Game Boy Color is a game that really makes me feel my age, to be honest. This game was originally released in Japan in 1998, but wouldn't see a wider release into Europe or the US until the year 2000. And I'll be honest admitting that this game is what taught me how to play the actual card game. Though that may not be a surprise considering how all of the kids in the playground would bicker over trading cards, rather than playing with them. So I basically missed out on any opportunity to play the card game against an actual human player. But at least I had this little pocket version to carry around and play to my heart's desire, and I could have any card I wanted as long as I was willing to duel enough people in order to acquire the booster packs that had the card I wanted. Story-wise, the Pokemon trading card game on Game Boy Color isn't anything special. The game features a very basic story where you collect medals from 8 clubs in order to challenge the 4 Grandmasters in order to acquire the powerful legendary cards, and along the way you'll be challenged by your rival who is always a step ahead of you. That sneaky little... Basically, this game is like the main series games, only you don't have to train your cards in order to make them more powerful, or go on a crawl through tall grass in order to move from one area to the next. And much like the main series games, each of the clubs is aligned with a specific type of Pokemon. Yes, this story is amazingly original, but like almost every other element in this review, the story is rather meaningless, since the goal of the game is to enable you to play the trading card game whenever you want. As such, the story is almost meaningless in the grand scheme of things, beyond giving you something to do beyond playing so-and-so over again. I'll be honest with saying it's difficult to really fault the game in this area. Since this game is a card game, the only thing the game needs to do is allow you to play the card game, be an accurate representation of the card game, and also allow you to build and modify decks as you see fit, with the various cards you acquire. And since the game allows you to do all of these things, it is practically perfect in almost every way that truly matters. Although people do raise a few issues I'd like to address. One issue that people commonly bring up with this game is that the coin flips appear to be set. Though I can easily justify this by pointing out the fact that if they weren't set, the player could easily try to take advantage of the game by simply resetting, since the game will save in the middle of a match, if the power cuts out. So fixing the flips was a practical decision that prevents players from cheating in order to get around bad luck. And in my opinion, if you are counting solely on luck in order to win matches, then you are making a major mistake with any card game. Another issue people commonly bring up with this game is that each of the clubs have obvious weaknesses you can exploit. And while this is true, it's hard to fault the game for this considering the main series games do this too when it comes to the gyms. And you can usually predict what types of Pokemon various people will use based on their sprites in those games as well. A good example of this are Hikers, which primarily carry around rock, ground, or fighting Pokemon. This means you have a pretty good chance of getting the early edge in a match if you switch to a water type before walking into their line of sight. And if this factor truly annoys you so much, then I recommend playing matches against the clubs using decks containing cards of the same element. This will definitely prevent you from getting an easy edge over your opponent, and you'll have to try to play more skillfully and build better decks instead. About the only semi-legitimate complaint I and others can throw at this game is that many of the AI opponents are rather underwhelming in terms of skill or ability. Every now and again the AI will throw a trick at you that you may have not considered yourself, like combining Scoop Up with a Pokemon with high health, like Chansey, in order to stall out a game for a little bit. But most opponents are rather predictable and will try to bench a Pokemon that can potentially become powerful in order to build it up before deploying it to the field. Albeit, this limitation probably exists because of the lack of cards in the game. The game only includes 226 unique cards you can play with. As such, the amount of strategies you can utilize with a strict deck limit of 60 cards is extremely limited. This issue gets even worse when you consider the fact that 1/3 or half of your deck is usually comprised of energy cards, so I'm not sure I can even fault the AI in any capacity for this issue. Graphically speaking, the game is alright. It isn't anything special to look at, but considering the main focus is on playing a card game, it didn't have to be anything special in the first place. Heck, you spend most of your time dueling various players anyway, so the only important thing in terms of visuals was to make sure that the cards look nice and are accurate visual representations of the real-life cards. And in that area, the game succeeds in spades. Sound-wise, the game is just average in terms of both its music and sound effects, which is to say there isn't anything too annoying here in my opinion. But if you aren't fond of the music, I'd simply suggest turning it off. It's not like I listen to music while playing card games in real life, and not hearing the sounds of plastic and paper sliding past each other is fine by me as well. But the only thing I truly miss in this game is the sound you make when you slam down the winning card onto the field. While the actual physical card game has moved well beyond this game, and has made the game rather dated in the grand scheme of things, it's hard to deny that this game is an old-school classic for the Game Boy Color, and it's definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of the Pokemon franchise and its various incarnations, or if you're a fan of trading and collectible card games.